first grade. Free kick in at the goalkeeper, long shot attempted. Oh! Great looking pass out wide. That is fantastic. That is sensational. And that's the winner. Welcome to the first episode of the 2022 Blacktown Football Hour podcast. My name is Marc I'm joined by Spartans first grade women's head coach Brad Attard and the best referee in the league, as he is known at the table exclusively, Darren Glover. Thanks very much for joining us, boys. I'd just like to start by saying, first of all, welcome to a new year and for our Spartans fans and players, and to our association's fans and players and referees and parents and everyone in between. The podcast obviously looks a little bit different this year. First of all, you've got visuals as well as audio, so you'll be able to find it and watch along or listen in while you're in the car on the way home from a long day of work. We've got plenty of graphics to throw up, which might include league tables, or photos, which Darren might show you this year, as you'll see. If you haven't met me before, my name is Marc. I'm relatively new around these parts. You might have heard my voice on the Premier League Match of the Round commentaries last year, those live streams, which of course will be back very soon, starting in 2 weeks actually. So keep your eye on your Facebook and YouTube feeds for that. And some other stuff, like I featured on the podcast once, but this year I'll be hosting it, and I'm very excited to. I've got two fantastic guests to help me along through the ride this time. But without further ado, I'll start with Brad. Could you give us a bit of a spiel about yourself, Brad? Who are you?
Thanks for inviting Darren and I to the first football hour, although this says planning meeting 20 to 30 minutes, so obviously we're not that exciting. No, that's a good joke to start with. Well done. My name's Brad. I'm the first grade women's coach here at Blacktown, been so for the last couple of years, so been at the club for 6 or 7 years now, so looking forward to another great season. And yeah, I've been on the Blacktown Football Hour a couple of times. Obviously first time face to face, so I don't know how I feel about it right now, but I'm sure it'll be a great season. I'm sure that Marc, you'll probably get a lot out of this, and looking forward to probably having the opportunity to take the mickey out of a couple of players during the year as well. So it should be good. Looking forward, Marc.
Excellent. That's what we all love to do, of course, keep everybody honest. And hopefully no open goal misses before they feature on the podcast in coming weeks, because then they're going to have to cop it, that's for sure. Darren, on the other hand, your sort of involvement with the Blacktown area and football and sport in general goes beyond the Blacktown area. It goes to the greater waters of Australia and goes beyond. So before we really get into what your story is, obviously we have some time set aside for that, but could you just give me sort of 30 seconds to a minute on who are you?
Okay, my name's Darren Glover, and firstly I'd just like to clarify the introduction. That wasn't my my words about the referee. I put myself maybe 10th, but
who's 11th, Darren?
Thank you anyway. That he goes to 10. I've been playing in the Blacktown district for off and on for about 40 odd years. Been a referee for the last, this will be the 8th season that I've been refereeing in Blacktown. Thoroughly enjoy playing and thoroughly enjoy refereeing as well. Excellent.
So if you guys have any ideas for the podcast, sections you'd like to see, people you'd like to see, or if you're an association player, Premier League player, a coach, or someone who's looking to, for example, up their registration numbers before the season starts soon in our association, please feel free to contact me. I will put up my email along here, which is one of the benefits of having our podcast visual as well this year. So please feel free to get in contact with me. We'd love to have you on or hear from you as well. Let's, before we jump into sort of the questions I have for you, Brad, I will say that the podcast this year will include, as we heard last year, results from our Spartans Association AYL, our Match of the Round Premier League and other Premier League fixtures. We're going to have everything related to that. Goal scorers, our goal of the week, perhaps our save of the week this year will be up here as well. We're going to have players involved from both Association and Spartans, and we're going to have guests on, minimum 2, hopefully 3 every week. Just like we see here, and all kinds of special people that are going to feature. So let's jump into this straight away. Brad, Obviously, you're in the midst of a pre-season. You've got about just over a month, I believe, till competition starts. Might be a little bit more if I'm off there. But I think things are looking really good all across the board for women's football here for the Spartans. So why don't you sort of take us through what pre-season looked like so far?
Yeah, I think we're set to a really good year, and I've been told not to land on the table, so my apologies there straight off the bat.
That's my fault.
We're looking really good. We're looking really good, Marc. It's really difficult to get a gauge about where we sit and where we're headed to, especially in the first grade space. And I spoke to a couple of other coaches in the space over the past week, and we all have a pretty general consensus that it's really difficult to gauge where you're at in terms of your first grade results this time of the season, because you've got the A-League women still going ahead. We obviously don't have our A-League women players with us training at the moment, so it is tough to get a gauge. But in terms of our squad, in terms of the senior women, we're in a really good space. We've got a brand new reserve grade coach in terms of Lauren Phelps, who has been there as a player before, has been there as coach before. Lauren and I actually coached together a couple of seasons and won a couple of trophies together, which was really great. And we now reunite in the coaching stuff in the senior space, as well as reintroducing some players that we had back in those under 15 days. So yeah, it's kind of like a bit of deja vu, and hopefully we see it's deja vu this season with a couple of more trophies. But yeah, see, the pre-season's been really good. We've ramped it up most recently, so the conditioning has been fantastic for the girls, and they've really enjoyed it. That's at least what they've told me. I'm sure they haven't, but yeah, we've got a really promising outlook towards 2022. We haven't set any goals just yet. We know our goals in terms of a coaching team and a club's perspective, but that'll be the goal that'll be the aim once they all come back and return from the A-League women's season. We'll set some goals as a team, as individuals, and fingers crossed we can achieve them, because it's probably been a little bit too long that we haven't had a first grade trophy here, and I'm not trying to put pressure on anyone. Our job is just to do the job week in, week out, and see how well we can compete, but we'll have some goals in there too.
Great to see Phelpsy as well, a female coach coaching in female football, which I think is always an achievement, and glad to say that that's something that we are really proud of as well. Obviously, it really helps that we have a synthetic pitch off here to our left that we can train on, perhaps when people aren't maybe allowed to use their grass field, so I'm sure we can use that to our advantage as well. I know that we have some potential signings on the horizon, some who might be already, legally allowed to hold up a Spartan shirt, but perhaps not just yet, because of course the W League season is still going on. Do you reckon you could give us a little bit of an insight into perhaps the kinds of caliber, maybe the kind of personalities you were looking for when you went out looking for new players this year?
Yeah, we have made some signings already. Players have already committed. We've had a lot of returning players as well. Somewhat of around the 80% mark has returned in the senior space, which is a really good percentage, and we're happy with that. In terms of signings, yeah, I can't probably announce them right now, although I would love to, but it's probably not just the right thing to do. The A-League women are starting to heat up, and there's 6 or 7 clubs going for 4 spots, and it's all very, very tight. But in terms of the calibre coming, there's some tremendous players that'll come across and wear tangerine and black this year. I always say that, apologies, it has to be bright orange that you got to wear, but that's okay. Everyone's on board with that. But the calibre of players such as Rosie Galea, that's the club captain, very hard-working, strong mindset, just a real club person. So we look forward to welcoming them, and the players that we've got returning from last year are having tremendous seasons in the A-League women as well. Players like Maya Makowski scoring for victory. There's obviously a meme going around her in terms of the penalty and the C reaction. She probably won't mention the miss pen, but that's okay. Ashley Croft's currently golden boot at the Wanderers and scoring some pretty tremendous goals. And there's a few other young players that are playing in that league that are starting to make their mark, that will one, return to Blacktown, or 2, sign with us this year, which we're really looking forward to. So I can't give too much away, but looking forward, mate.
Well, if you can hear right now, we've just got under a cloud of torrential rain, so forgive me if the microphone is in fact it will be picking that up, so you'll have to just sort of bear with, but we'll make sure that our voices are nice and clear over the top. Darren, we're going to cross to you now, and now you're your face is probably not one that's as familiar around probably our social media or even around the grounds, even though you've been here for such an extensive amount of time. Now, Darren, if you guys aren't aware, is a footballing, cricketing, AFL sports nut, really. Tragic, I think you could describe it as, for sure.
That's one word for it, yeah.
But it's certainly given you some experiences that I think you'd say would last forever, and I don't think you're anywhere near stopping going to games.
No,
of course not. So look, we've set aside most of the time of this episode to talk about this because I'd love to hear it. I've only just met you an hour ago. So why don't you detail to me where your obsession began, where it took you, and where you are now.
Sure. All right, well, here goes. Started back in when I was 8 years old. That's when I first played competitive football, or soccer as we used to call it back then. So ever since I can remember, I've always been a bit of a sports nut. So I grew up back in the 70s, and things were a bit different back then, where obviously with social media and all that sort of thing, none of that existed. So I'm a bit old school when it comes to that. That's probably why you haven't seen me much to do with social media and things. So yeah, we used to just be out in the backyard playing football, cricket, soccer, tennis, whatever, as kids, as you do, either in the backyard or up the local park. But I first started playing, back in '76 in the under 8s at Quakers Hill. My dad and brother were involved with the club the year before, so I just got involved that way. I'd go up there on weekends and watch the games and participate training, and then obviously pestered my dad enough to let me play for Quakers. That was before Blacktown Association actually existed. We were in the Nepean district back then for a couple of seasons, and then in '79 when Blacktown formed, I was still playing with Quakers through to the age of 14. Then I went to Blacktown United, the Tangerine and Blacks, back then, and I played for 7 years there. Started in the under 15s, and I was actually lucky enough to be captain of the first Blacktown team to ever win a Champion of Champions trophy. So, and then I progressed from there, playing a few seasons of Blacktown District Rep football. Progressed from there into Blacktown United State League side, where I played for 5 or 6 years. Then I came back to Quakers Hill into the Premier League, and we won Premiership first year back, so that was quite good. Then I moved to Oakville a couple of years later and had a season with Oakville, and was lucky enough to win the Premier League back there as well. We're actually the first and only Oakville team to win the Premier League title. Then went back to Quakers Hill and was lucky enough over the next 6 or 7 years to win another 5 premierships. So then I went to Kellyville Colts for a season, played in their State League side there, and came back to Quakers Hill again. Was lucky enough to win another 1 or 2 premierships. And then I did a bit of travelling, took some time out, travel overseas, following sport around for a couple of years. And then from there, I think it was in 2000, I was actually lucky enough to be part of the Quakers Hill Prems team that made the Champion of Champions final. First Premier League team to do that. Unfortunately, we got beat 2-1 by Grace Point. But so that was a good thing to see Deanside, all those years later, to actually go one better and win it. I think that was good for Blacktown and the Premier League. It let other districts know that Blacktown
fantastic game, that too.
Yeah, you were there, Brad?
Yeah, fantastic game.
Yeah, well deserved. I'm told. Yeah. So they so it was a good thing to put Blacktown on the map. That is a good strong competition. Then I went overseas in 2008. I lived over in the UK for 6 years, and I came back, had another season in the Premier League with Quakesville Tigers, and then I started play over 35s and been doing that ever since. So took up refereeing in 2015, and been doing that ever since as well. So yeah, but I've been lucky enough to travel to a few parts of the world and been to a couple of soccer World Cups, a few cricket World Cups, a couple of rugby World Cups. So been about a little bit, you could say, yeah.
Darren, that's fantastic. Look, I'd love to know, and we talked about it before, off camera before, Brad rolled up late. But why don't you take us through a bit more detail, particularly the football, but also I know cricket is a big thing for you as well. So tell us about, in detail, some of those experiences, those World Cups, those lower league games that we spoke about before. Let's talk about those.
I went. My first experience, I went to England for an Ashes series back in the late 90s, and that was just, as a cricket nut, that was an awesome experience. Then I came back home and I got the bug. I'd actually been to South Africa back in '95 for the Rugby World Cup. So that's where the travel bug sort of started. And then I was lucky enough to be able to do a bit more travelling. Went to the Ashes in the late 90s, then decided to go back for the 99 Cricket World Cup in England. I had some friends say to me, "You're mad, you'll never get tickets," because they're, as you know, in England, they're cricket nuts as well. And I said, I've got more chance of getting into the game being there than I have sitting at home on the couch. So I went over without tickets and managed to get to every Australian game, even the famous game against South Africa in the semi-final when we ran out Alan Donald on the last ball to get through to the final. Got myself to the final. Then went to South Africa again in 2003 for the Cricket World Cup again, which was great. Went to the Caribbean for West Indies tour in 2003, 2008. Went to South Africa again in 2006. Sri Lanka. Been to 4 Ashes tours in England. I was lucky enough on 2 of those occasions to actually be working for a travel company as a tour guide for those, so I didn't have to stress about getting tickets. Been to 2010 Soccer World Cup in South Africa, 2006 World Cup in Germany, which once again I didn't have any tickets for, but I had more chance of getting.
Which games did you go to in that one?
All the Australian games,
okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Lucky enough to get the ticket to the Italy game.
Or lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it.
Right?
I'm Italian,
okay.
But I mean, I was also I was only 5 years old during that game, so I wasn't really too upset when Kosovo fell over. But
so I was lucky enough to be able to experience all of that as well. It's been great. Been to other sporting events around the world as well. Went to Tour de France. Been to Wimbledon a few times. Was lucky enough to actually work at Wimbledon one season, 2010, when Andy Murray won Wimbledon. So that was great. Front row seats to everything there.
How much do they pay you, referees?
Not enough.
That was the idea to plug it.
That was before. That was before the refereeing days, actually. So yeah. Now I'm refereeing to pay the bills from the travel.
That's right.
So, yeah. But no, I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel around, the world and follow sporting events. Bit of a passion of mine. So.
Mm-hmm. A little bit.
Yeah.
Do you have a favourite moment in any sport that really stands out for you, or two moments?
There's so many. That semi-final win by Australia in the World Cup was right up there. Probably seeing Australia turn out in Kaiserslautern against Japan in 2006
What a game.
World Cup,
Yeah.
being the first time that we'd been there for 35 years or so. Being at the game when John Aloisi scored the winning penalty against Uruguay to get us to the World Cup, that was a highlight. Even though that was in Sydney, that was a big moment.
Where were you seated?
I was actually, believe it or not, behind the goal.
Oh wow.
Down the end where they were taking the penalties. So yeah, we could. That was something else. And that moment the ball hit the back of the net, I decided that's when I was going to Germany to follow that around. Yeah. So I lived in a two-door Peugeot for a month while the World Cup was on. So didn't have tickets, didn't have accommodation, just bummed around Germany, sleeping in the back of the car. So
We'll have to get a photo of that Peugeot. Chuck it.
I hope you can go and find it. We
Yeah.
would have been showing a couple of photos by now. He sent them to me before we started this, but if you haven't sent that one through,
I would say that Peugeot is probably well and truly scrapped by now. After a month of me living in it.
oh yeah.
Yes.
And look, now you're a referee, and from what I've been told, like again, I only met you an hour ago, but from what I've been told, if people had sort of looked at you 10, 20 years ago and said, or 20 years ago and said, you're going to be a referee one day, I don't think you would have sort of known that you would have been.
No,
So how'd you end up here?
definitely not. Even 7 years ago, if you had have said you'll be a referee. When I came back from overseas, back in the end of 2013, I got back into playing, and then I just sort of thought I want to give something back. I'd coached a couple of junior teams prior to that, so I just thought I wanted to give something, sort of put something back into the game as well. And one or two people had actually mentioned, coming from a player's perspective, that it might be a good thing to do, which first thoughts I laughed it off, because during my earlier playing days, me and the referees had a special relationship, you could say. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought it's probably not such a crazy idea. And I think from coming from a player's point of view, that certainly helps in game situations. So I just thought I'll give it a go, and signed up, and yeah,
So
it's been good fun.
as someone who never thought they would be refereeing, to then have such a sort of drastic change, there are definitely people who are watching right now who might be on the fence about taking it up this year, who might stop playing to take it up this year, or maybe are in your similar boat where they haven't thought about it at all. So what would you recommend to those who are thinking about it or not even thinking about it? Why would they take it up?
Well, I'd say you never know till you have a go, so there's no harm in trying. If it's not for you, then it's not for you, but I think you'd be surprised, as I was, once you get into it, get a few games under your belt, you'd thoroughly enjoy it. You need to be on the ball, so to speak, but as long as you've got a bit of a thick skin and don't take, too much to heart, then you'll get along fine. Players say things in the heat of the moment. As long as you understand that, 90% of it's not personally directed at you. If it was somebody else, they'd be saying the same thing. I'll just say, give it a go. Sign up, and we're always looking for more referees as well, so we could always do with more. You'll definitely enjoy it. It's well worth it.
You ever thought about becoming a referee?
Oh, look, I enjoy it. I think just touching on the being a thick skin, I think from a coach's perspective, I've seen a change in the past, you call it 7 years, and I'd be interested to get your opinion as well, but I feel as though as a coach, there's been player education around what you can say or what you shouldn't say to a referee, and there's been a lot of media about respect to referees, which is fantastic. There's not enough of it because unfortunately it still happens, but even when I go and watch some community under 10s and 12s and 14s football, I feel as though the respect level's getting better. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that, or there's still a lot of work to do?
Yeah, I would say definitely from the days when I played back through the 90s, sometimes it was a bit out of control.
Yeah.
And the referees back then deserved treble what they were getting. But from a player's point of view, you don't really look at it from a referee's point of view. But since I've been refereeing, obviously you have a whole different, perspective. And I would definitely say, I agree with you there, Brad, that it's certainly improved. There's still a way to go, but it certainly has improved from when I first started. But we can always improve as players, coaches, and referees as well. So it's a two-way thing. Players need to obviously give referees the respect, but from our side, from our point of view as well, we need to do the same. But I do think that it's definitely has improved a lot. But I do think that a lot of things that are said in the heat of the moment, we just need to take a step back, take a couple of seconds before we make decisions on both sides of the fence, and we can work things out.
Yeah. Well, look, I've never been a ref or a coach, but genuinely, is a conversation you might have with your players centre around sort of who should be approaching a referee, like when should the captain come over from the other side of the pitch? Is that something that happens?
Yeah, definitely. There's, for us as a level of professionalism that we try and teach, but you're right, the heat of the moment comes, and the reality is we're playing at an elite level where players are playing semi-professionally. So there's moments that ride in a game where tensions can build. But it's definitely, well, for me, speaking from my point of view, there's definitely conversations about how we address referees. The reality is, in my opinion, referees make good decisions, they make bad decisions, players make good decisions, players also make bad decisions. Yeah. The reality is I don't think that a referee could potentially cost a team a game. I don't believe in that, because there's a million moments in 90 minutes where there's so many factors that kind of lead into that. Is it a factor? Of course it is. Of course the referee is a factor. No one's trying to rule that out, but if it rains, it's a factor. Mm-hmm. So there's so many different factors. So definitely that's discussed about. I think that the education around how you approach and go towards referees has definitely changed, and there's been education around that. I think there's harsher punishments now in terms of abuse to referees or talking to referees. Look, it's unfortunate that there's still a bit of it in the game, and it's like that in every sport, but definitely a conversation. And look, the reality is if I was the coach and we had a striker who had scored on average once a game, and it was coming into the back end of the season, and they abused a referee or disagreed with a referee's call and was red carded, subsequently missing the next X amount of games, I wouldn't be happy. So if that explains it.
Yeah, just touching on that, like you said, bro, I think that players are far more educated now, and a lot more players have more respect. You're still going to get players that don't, but as I said before, me personally, I don't take things to heart. During my 40 odd years of playing, I've got my fair share of abuse, and from spectators and players from other teams. Yeah. I've never been the most popular, player in Blacktown. But with that, you've just got to learn to, roll with it. You don't take everything to heart. Players will, blow up in the heat of the moment. As long as you stay calm and stay focused, then you'll be all right as a referee. Yeah.
Darren hit the nail on the head when he said that I was a past player and I come back and I refed and I wanted to give back. And I think that goes a long way, because the reality is when someone's frustrated, for example, kicks the ball away, Darren's very good in terms of player management. He'll come over and say, "Hey, what'd you do that for?" Because you made the wrong call. "Oh, well, I'm sorry. That was how I saw it." And that's the conversation that Darren has on the field with you. I've been refed by Darren probably 20, 30 times. So
we've had a few conversations.
Yeah, that's the reality. But players then appreciate that, and players will do something and say sorry. Out of line, and then he'll say sorry. They give you this ticket, and it's kind of accepted more, if that makes sense. So your player relationship's been really good, and that's probably a key that I enjoy seeing as a coaching perspective when referees have discussions with players and pretty much lay down the floor with them and appreciate that play management.
You can see from a player's point of view, because 20 years ago I probably would have done exactly the same thing. So
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think anybody who might be watching along thinking about taking up wearing the yellow in the middle of the field, and that would be that if it was anybody else besides me, they'd be getting the same abuse, they'd be getting the same credit, they'd be getting everything. So whether you're a referee A or referee B, if you make that decision, you're going to get that response. That's just the way it is. It's nothing personal.
No, that's right. And as Brad said, decisions are made on the spur of the moment. From a referee's point of view, from what they see, player might be seeing it from a different angle. The opposition player might see it from a different angle. The coach sees it from another angle. So you've got 5 or 6 different. And
you don't condone it. I'm not condoning it by any means. It's not on.
Of course. Yeah, it does happen.
But again, heat of the moment is a thing. That's the way we see it everywhere. We see it everywhere. But we also see when referees get mic'd up at a professional level, that players' relationships with referees will actually tend to be very good.
It's huge.
So it's fine. We could see it here even at our level. Our level, as in our local level, is where we play. So we're not the Premier League here. We're trying to be. I think the one final thing would be is, again, great thing about having this visual this year is if you'd like to type in what I'm gesturing here, that's how you can find out everything related to training courses, when they are, pricings, uniforms. That's how you find out. If you want to be a referee, you can take it up by clicking here. The final thing, I agree. We've had one of the focuses for our registration campaign for our association this year, as well as players, but has really been referees. And we spoke to Mario, and we spoke to Kiana, who's a young female referee, and just fantastic personalities, people who love to talk about this as well. And they made me consider, like, would I be doing this if I wasn't busy every Saturday and Sunday? So that's absolutely convincing, and it's not a big thing to change. Kiana plays as well as referees, so perfect examples.
It's Friday nights, Marc. Get your whistle.
And you can earn some coin as well. So.
That's exactly right.
Fantastic coin. If you're a young kid, better coin than any hospitality venue.
You'd be 12 or 13 doing a referee job, or game leaders as we call it at that age.
Yeah, get your parents down there. That would be what I would suggest if you're a young kid and giving it for the first couple of times. I'd probably take your parents down, or take some relatives down, I'm sure you'd agree, and just kind of help you and guide you through those first few games, because there's a few.
As senior referees, we try to get around to the grounds and try and help out the young guys, be sort of mentors to them. And during training, we have training twice a week. So we tend to get the senior guys down there as well and try and help the young guys out. Good. So the more the merrier.
Oh, good.
Now, usually this segment might come at different parts or times of the podcast. A little bit of a Spartans youth boys wrap up. Haven't had the best of starts to the seasons, but there's plenty of time for things to turn around. Faced really good competition. I think they're still finding their feet at the moment. Weather's been difficult, but it's difficult for everyone, so it's not necessarily an excuse. It's just they're finding their feet. Plenty of changes in the off-season, everything that goes with that. They'll find themselves pretty quick. You can find their results by heading to, I think it is Dribble, where you can head there. Now, the very last thing that I wanted to talk about, and this was something that we pre-planned before, and that is, at each time in the podcast towards the end, we want to talk about a real world, well, probably an overseas world sort of football topic. And this week we wanted to touch on the Premier League. So as in the English Premier League, in the men's. We had a cup final very recently, and it was a great game. If you haven't watched it, obviously he's very happy with it. But again, I've got the top 8 here, which goes from Man City in first down to Wolves in 8th. Plenty of games in hand for the likes of Arsenal there as well. Boys, what would you say is your top 4 predictions come the end of 38 games?
Brad?
Throw it at me. I don't think this top 3 changes, in my opinion. I think City's too good. I think they've got too much depth. I think they play a quality brand of football, as do Liverpool. I just can't see City dropping too many points. They'll need to drop another 3, and Liverpool obviously need to catch up.
Yeah.
So I can't see that happening. So I don't think that top 3 changes I don't think Chelsea catches Liverpool. So my top 3 would be City, Liverpool, Chelsea. I'm a United fan, but doesn't look It doesn't look very optimistic as a United fan. For a spanner in the works, I think Tottenham might throw something. There you go.
Tottenham to sneak into the top 4. Yeah,
There you go.
Yeah, a few games in hand.
just a
for
couple of
Arsenal.
games in hand, and even though they slipped up the other week when they lost, I think they've still got the games in hand, and with Harry Kane up front,
Starting to hit some
anything's
form.
possible. Yeah, so I'd agree with Brad there. I'd say it's City's to lose.
Yeah, I would agree.
Liverpool probably realistically the only other one that can catch them, and then I'd say Chelsea will obviously finish in 3rd. It was a great result, the League Cup final the other day.
If you are a Liverpool fan,
for Liverpool fans, yes, like myself. I was actually lucky enough in 2006 to be at the FA Cup final when Liverpool beat West Ham on penalties.
Yes.
Which I think was probably the last time they won the FA Cup. So they're still alive in that this year too. So hopefully they can go on and get the quadruple.
Unpopular opinion. I sent it to you the other day. 12th pen does the coach jump out and take it.
No, I looked and then I saw that the 13th one should be a random from the crowd. What about the 14th one being the referee and then his 2 ARs as well? That was one of the longest penalty shootouts we've seen since the Europa League final, I guess. Man United fans won't like that one. So I didn't even know you were a United fan, so that's good to know. I did see today that mathematically, in terms of the games that they have remaining and the quality of opposition, Arsenal have a 72% chance of finishing in that 4th spot. However, with 13 games to go, probably 10 games to go, 11 games to go for some of these clubs, it's anything can happen. We're talking about a whole huge amount of 30 points, 33 points up for grabs for some of these teams.
Still,
So anything can happen. It's going to be really exciting. Any other sort of comments in relation to this topic here?
Well, I think as far as we say Man City's more than likely going to win it, but as we've seen a few seasons ago on the last day of the season, so I think the Premier League's probably the most exciting league in the world for that.
Yeah, we haven't even spoken about the relegation battle, which is
just
as exciting.
I think Italy comes close. Napoli have just gone from 3rd to 1st because the 2 Milanese clubs don't want to take control of it. They keep wanting to draw and lose at home. So that's an exciting one to watch as well. But I think it's way easier for us to watch the Premier League just because it's easy to. Yeah, it is. The relegation battle. I mean, Burnley's on the come up now. Look, we won't talk about this for too much, as long as I get my words right. But look, I think the 2 that are at the bottom now, which is Watford and Norwich, I know they've had a change of manager, both of them this season, and Roy Hodgson's got their first clean sheet in, I believe, 400 and something days. So I do think it'll still be those 2 to go down. It's that last one, same as it is the 4th spot. It's that 18th spot.
Yeah.
I really do think Leeds are in some trouble, and their new manager appointment this year is rather interesting. I think it's the assistant who stepped in. I've been at work, so I haven't read too much into it yet.
Yeah, I think Leeds are in trouble too. I'd agree with you, Marc.
Well, they've considered 5+ goals in the last 3 games, and then 3+ goals in the last 5 games. So it's a record as well. Those 2 stats, I believe. So
I'm kind of agreeing, but I'm thinking Brentford's probably in a bit of trouble because just through depth of squad, the likes of Everton, who are struggling at the moment, they're just I think too big of a club to go down. Mind you, we've said Newcastle's one of the biggest clubs in the
world.
In the world, yeah, and they've been relegated before as well. So, but I just think Everton's just got enough. They'll survive with Frankie Lampard looking after them. But for mine, I think Brentford maybe might just.
Yeah. I mean, Brentford have been hurt by injuries recently, and their actual recent fixtures have been really difficult. So I think they've played United, Spurs, and City in the last 5 or 6 games. So their fixtures do come better. The problem is the sort of cohesion that we saw at the start of the season isn't really there anymore, and their defensive record has sort of been shot. But I think, so yours is Brentford, ours is probably Leeds.
Yeah, just a bit of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, the defensive record is just, you can't look past it. But I think that's going to do it for today, boys.
Well, we haven't spoke about Ange Postecoglou with Celtic.
Oh, we can talk about that.
The Scottish Premier League.
The dropout of Europe hurt.
Yeah.
But in terms of what they're doing and if they can maintain it, I think it would be a fantastic thing for Australian management.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's something you look at and go, this is where we can head pathway.
I'm a Hibs fan myself, but I'm hoping Celtic win the league for Postecoglou. Yeah.
And Tom Rogers as well. So in that
cool
squad. But it would be nice to see. Kevin Muscat's just set records has beaten first place and beaten some sort of record in his side. So there's great Australians doing great things all over the place.
Yeah. No, it's going well.
But I think that is going to have to do it for us, this one. I know it said 20 to 30 minutes on there, but it went for longer, and they are going to go for longer. That's fine.
Is it the hour?
Blacktown football quarter of over. So
45 minutes.
That's right. Blacktown half an hour was the original aim, but
that's okay.
Blacktown hour and a bit. We'll get there one day. But yeah, I think that's going to do it. So the things that we talked about today, we talked about Brad, we talked about Darren, his story, where his team's at. Obviously, you can register for our local association. Still plenty of time to do so. Watch the Premier League match of the rounds, which will be commentated by myself. This podcast will be released once a week, all the way until, I believe, September that we go to. And if you want to be a referee, you've heard exactly why. Even if you're the personality type that doesn't think that your personality type matches it, it does. You just got to find a way to find that love. He did. And of course, you can register by clicking the link that I put on before. I might even put it here again. So thanks very much for having the time and the guts to come on here in front of this ridiculously bright light and speak to us. But I really appreciate it, boys.
Thanks for inviting us, Marc. Good to see you again, Brad.
Yeah, likewise, mate. We'll share a yarn and bring the sunnies if you're next on the podcast.
All right. See you later, guys. Bye bye.